Yo, what's good everybody, this is Rocklan, welcome back to a brand new video. In this video I'm going to be teaching you how you can import your CS2 demos into Blender to create 3D animations for your CS2 frag movies and edits and that sort of thing. This video is kind of like a part 3 of a series of other videos that I've made. So I have one where I go from CS2 into Source 2 Filmmaker and another one where I go from CS2 into Blender. And in this one we're going to be going from Source 2 Filmmaker into Blender so that we can capture all of the animations and stuff from our demo file. If you guys haven't seen those other two videos, then I definitely recommend you go and give them a watch before this one. Otherwise some of this stuff might not make any sense, but I'll let you know which parts, obviously relate to previous videos, and I'll try and show them in as much detail as I can here so you can follow along as best as you can. But you may have to go back and watch 5-10 minutes of either of those for different sections. But for the most part, I'm going to try and keep this as simple and beginner friendly as possible. Now, this is not perfect. It's still early days for CS2 animations and the tooling surrounding it, so what we're going to get is a workable basis, but it's nothing perfect like it was back in the CS2 days where you could literally just import a CS2 demo file with all of its materials, models, animations and everything at the click of a button. Hopefully we'll get there one day, and when we do, and when there are any updates to the process or any better ways to do things, of course I'll make an update video, but for the moment this is the best that I can come up with using the current tooling that's available. So without any further ado, let's get into the video. So to start with, we're going to launch into Source 2 Filmmaker. If you don't know how to use that or what it even is, then definitely make sure you go and watch my previous video where I showed how to go from CS2 demos into Source 2 Filmmaker. I'll put the thumbnail of that video on screen. And essentially what you should have at the end of following that video is this, which is essentially a video clip of whatever the the demo is inside of CS2, but in Source 2 Filmmaker. So as you can see here, this is the demo clip. It's a bit laggy because I'm recording, but yeah, this is the demo clip that we had from the last video. So in here I can obviously pop into the work camera and I can watch the demo just like I would in CSGO, except in Source 2 Filmmaker we now have control of all of the models and animations and things like that, and this is the basis that we're going to use to export them into Blender. Okay, so to start with, like I said, you should have this project already created from following the other video, and you'll see that I've already trimmed it down just like I did before. So it's just this section of the video that we have, not the entire recording. So just this 8-second clip here, which is what I want to import into Blender. So I'm going to show you how to export the POV animation. If you just want the animation to be third person, so you can fly the camera around and do whatever you want, then all the steps of this video still apply, minus exporting the view model and animation as well as the camera animation, but everything else you can still follow along. And make sure if you are not doing a POV animation, then when you do the demo recording as described in the last video, you make sure that you're not looking from the perspective of one of the players when you're recording. I explained that in that video, and there's another video by Much Charmander that explains that as well. But in this video I'm going to show you how to export the POV just in case you want to as well. And by POV I mean essentially the camera moving through the scene with the arms and the gun in front of it, rather than just having a 3D camera flying around the players as they're running through the map. So to start, let's export the camera. So as you can see, we're currently looking from our camera view, and in the animation set editor you can see we've got our camera. If your camera isn't here, which I believe it should be, if it's not for whatever reason, then you can come down to create animation set for existing elements and tap on that and you'll be able to find it there, hopefully. But the camera should be in your animation set editor if you followed the last tutorial correctly. So essentially what we're going to do now is just right click on it, go to export animation, and we're going to do trim to shot because we just want it to be this section that we've recorded here. That way we can make sure that all of our animations and stuff start and end at the same time when we line them up in Blender. And then all I'm going to do is just give it a name. So we're going to call this camera animation. As you can see, it's going to be a DMX file, which I believe is a Valve Source Filmmaker proprietary file. I'm not actually sure, but I've never seen it anywhere else. So let's go ahead and save that. And now we've exported the camera, I want to ask you a quick question. So I'm assuming if you're watching this video, it's because you want to use this animation for a CS2 frag movie or an edit. And a common issue that we run into as editors is finding great music to use in our edits that sounds great, but also won't get us a copyright strike. Well, that's no longer a problem thanks to this video sponsor, Licked. Licked is the perfect tool to enhance your YouTube videos by adding popular music tracks. Boasting a massive collection of over 1.3 million popular songs, Licked offers an extensive range for any type of content you want to create. Now you can legally obtain licenses and download music from some of the world's most renowned artists. As content creators on YouTube, we understand the platform's algorithm favors extended watch time, and what better way to keep your audience's attention than with some fantastic recognizable music, just like the track you're listening to now. Plenty of other massive creators like Mr. Beast, Logan Paul and the Sidemen are already boosting their engagement using Licked. If you don't license your music legally, you're taking a gamble with YouTube's content ID system, and believe me, you don't want to risk having your video flagged. This could result in anything from demonetization and restricted exposure to regional blocks or even a copyright strike against your channel. However, with Licked, these concerns are a thing of the past. So why wait any longer? It's time to take your content to the next level. Click the link at the top of the video description where Licked is offering an exclusive 50% discount off your first mainstream track purchase, along with 14 days free access to their extensive stock music collection. That's right, 50% off your first mainstream track and 14 days free stock music. So grab this opportunity and check out Licked with the link at the top of the video description and elevate your content today. And the next thing we're going to do is export the view model. So what we need to do is export the arm models as well as the animations that go with them. So let's right click in the animation set editor, create animation set for existing elements, and let's try and find where the arms of our player are. So just by clicking on it here, as you click through the different things, you'll see them light up in the viewport. So as you can see here, by clicking on this, that is our view model. So let's go ahead and hit OK on that. And you'll see now over here, we've got access to be able to control the arms of our player. So the first thing we need to do is export the model. The reason we didn't export a model for the camera is because there isn't one, it's just a camera, so all we need for that is the animation. But for everything else that we export, we're going to need both the model itself and the animations to go along with it, and we'll pair them up in Blender. So to export the view model arms, we're just going to select it, right click, and then go to open in model editor, and here you'll see in the model editor we have the arms of our character, and then all we're going to do is come up to file, export as, and we're just going to export it as we'll just call it view model files fbx obj. You should export as an fbx anyway, so we'll just leave that. Current pose is fine, materials is fine, that's all good, so we'll just go ahead and export that, and you can see successful. So let's close out of that. For the view model, we're going to export two animations, so two different versions of the same animation. The first one is going to be directly from Source Filmmaker unedited, and essentially what that's going to do is have the arms and the animation and all that stuff, and they'll actually be moving around the map just like they do in Source Filmmaker, except there's an issue in Blender, and I'll show you what that is later, where they sort of do some weird stuff. So we're going to export two different versions, use the first version as sort of like a template, and then the second version will parent to our camera and it will, you know, work normally. So to do that, let's just right click and we'll do export animation. Again, we're going to trim it to the shot, and we're going to call this view model animation, and we'll call this unaltered, and we'll just hit save on that. And now what we're going to do is expand on the body tab, expand on the arms tab, and we're going to lock arm lower L and lock arm lower R, and then we're going to select root transform, so you know the position and the rotation are selected. Then we're going to come down to the motion editor, right click here and delete samples, and essentially what that's going to do is remove the location data from the animation. So now when we parent it to the camera in Blender, it's going to be still and it's not going to go wandering off somewhere else, and you'll see the animation is completely fine when we make this change. So now what we're going to do is just unlock those, right click on it, export animation, trim to shot, and we're going to call this view model animation fixed, and we're going to do save. Okay, and then finally what we want to do is export the other player characters, so like this guy here. We're actually going to export this other guy, so this guy right here. There's no particular reason for it, I just feel like doing this one. I'm only going to show you how to export one other player in this tutorial, but the concept and process is exactly the same for every other one, so just rinse and repeat what I do for this one character for all of the other ones, and then later on in Blender, when I import this one character, you'll just do that same process for all of the other ones. So to do that, it's going to be much the same as how we exported our view model. So we're going to come over to the animation set editor, right click, create animation set for existing elements, and we're going to just click through here. So I know this is one of the Phoenix models, and you can see if I select this one, it selects him, and I know that it's actually this last one here, so I'm just going to select that one, hit OK, come over to Phoenix, right click, open model editor, and we're going to just export this one as well. So we're going to call this we'll just call it player, and export. OK, close out of that. And now what we want to do is similar to the hand animations, except we don't need to export to here. We can export this directly with the location data. But in order to do that, we need to essentially move the location data from the root transform, which is essentially this little like hidden bone, which you can see over time controls where the root of the armature of the character is. That will not export and be interpreted properly inside of Blender. Essentially, we need to move the rotation data from the root transform onto the pelvis bone, and we'll basically bake the location into the pelvis, which Blender will then be able to understand and use. At least I'm pretty sure that's how it works. I'm not 100%. It's taken me ages to figure all this stuff out, but I think that's a good explanation for it. So just copy what I do and it should be fine. So we're going to lock the pelvis bone, which means that when we make any modification to the root transform, the pelvis will be unaffected. So let's go onto root transform, select it just like before, and then in the motion editor, if you're not in it already, you'll see, we've got all the animation data for the root transform. We're going to right click on that, delete samples, and you'll see now it's gone. So if we unlock the pelvis, you'll see the animation again is completely fine, but the root transform isn't there. And instead, the location is now baked onto the pelvis. So when we export it, the character should run around properly inside the map, inside a Blender. If we didn't do this, then the character would just be running on the spot. So now what we're going to do is select the character, right click, export, animation, and we're going to call this player animation, and we're going to trim it to shot and hit save. And that's pretty much it for Source Filmmaker. So let's exit out of that. And now what we're going to do is load up Blender. So I'm using Blender 3.6 LTS. So if you want to follow along and, if you want to follow along exactly and use exactly the software that I use, then go and download Blender 3.6 LTS. You can get it from the link in the description or blender.org/download. But for the most part, everything I'm talking about should work in most versions of Blender 3. I haven't tested it in 4. So if you want to follow along exactly, you go for 3.6 LTS. So to start off with, what we're going to do is remove the splash screen just by clicking, press A on our keyboard to select all the objects and press delete. I'm going to treat this kind of like you have some basic understanding of Blender rather than a complete beginner's tutorial. But like I said, I do have another video where I show you how to get CSGO models, maps, animations, that kind of stuff into Blender. So if you want some context, I'd recommend going and watching that. The thumbnail for that video will be on screen right now, and I'll leave a link in the description as well as the card in the top right corner. In order to import and use all the things that we're going to use in this tutorial, we're going to need 2 Blender add-ons. So make sure you go up to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and you make sure that you have the Blender Source Tools and the Source IO add-ons added. I'll leave a link in the description to where you can download those. And then all you have to do once you've downloaded them is click on Install, and then find the zip file that you downloaded, select that, hit Install Add-on, and they should appear. Again, I showed how to do that in the Blender video, so go and watch that if you're unsure. And to check that it's working, if you come up to File, Import, you should have here Source Engine Assets and all of these options, as well as Source Engine right here as well. So this one is Source IO and this is Blender Source Tools. So to start with, let's import our map. So in my case, it's Dust 2. So we're going to come to File, Import, and we're going to use Source IO this time. And we're going to go down to where it says Source to packed map.vpk. So we're going to select that. Next, what you're going to want to do is find where your maps are installed. So I'm just going to open up Steam, right click on CS2, Properties, Installed Files. I'm going to do Browse, and it's opened me up here. And then from here, all we're going to do is go into Game, CSGO, Maps, and you'll see here are all of our map files. So let's copy the path of that back into Blender. We'll paste the path up here, and you'll see these are all of our map files. So I want Dust 2, so let's select Dust 2. Don't worry about the vanity maps, just select the map that you want. And on the world scale, I'm actually going to set this to 1, and then click Import Source to VMap from VPK. So we're going to import that. As you can see, it's imported all these funny shapes. They're being clipped out of view, so let's just adjust the clipping distance. So we're going to set the end to, we'll do 100,000, and you'll see now we'll be able to see them all properly. Importing maps is something that I showed in the Blender video, so make sure you watch that if you want a more detailed process. But essentially what we're going to do is just delete all of this excess stuff. You could probably keep lights if you wanted to and want to mess around with that, but for this tutorial I'm not going to. So let's just get rid of all of those, and then I'm going to import the maps using Source IO here. I'm just going to disable use instances, replace entity, and I'm going to load all these entities. If your computer's not very powerful, then you can just import a few of these at a time, but I'm going to just import all of them. Again, I'm sorry for going over that quite quickly. If you want a more detailed explanation, then watch my Blender video. So I'm going to quickly just import all of these. Okay, so as you can see, the map has been successfully imported. So here it is. We can turn on viewport shading just to get a simple idea of what exactly we're looking at. Okay, so as you can see, it looks a little bit messed up. All the black marks and stuff like that. We'll worry about fixing those later. But in the meantime, we should probably just get rid of these, get rid of any of these planes, which I believe are used for displaying dust and things like that in the actual game. But we are not going to need those as they'll just get in the way of the animation. So I've sort of cleared the area where we're at. I'll worry about the rest of that other stuff later. Another issue is all of these like green things that are everywhere. So essentially to get rid of those, let's just go into the outliner and we're looking for anything that says tool solid block light on it. So we're going to scroll down, tool solid block light goes to about here. So we're going to hold shift and select all of those. And then we're just going to press delete. And that's all of the green things gone away so we can see a bit easier. The map, we're not going to want to keep this big. We'll shrink it down for rendering to save on performance later on. But for the moment, we'll just leave it as it is for the sake of this tutorial. And yeah, I'll show you how to fix the dodgy textures later. So the next step is to import our camera for our POV. If you're not creating a POV animation, then you don't need to worry about the camera, but I am. So what I'm going to do is come up to File, Import, and then under Source Engine Assets, we're going to look for Source Engine Utils, Valve Camera.dmx, and then we're going to get the camera animation from here and you import DMX camera. Then you can click this little button here to toggle the camera view, and you can see now we're inside of our camera. But the issue is obviously when we scroll across the timeline, there's no animation. So why is that? I'll show you. So let's pull up the timeline and expand from over here and select our camera in the outliner. And if we expand the summary over here, you'll see we've got the camera and it looks like we've got some keyframes applied, but I can't see any of them. So we'll scroll out and lo and behold, here they are. And the reason for that is because when we trimmed our clip in Source Filmmaker, we discarded the beginning, discarded the end, and we just kept the middle bit. So it's exported it in the context of the entire animation rather than just the part that we trimmed. So let's drag these keyframes over so that they start when we want them to. So I want them to start on frame 1, which they do. There we go. We've dragged it to frame. You see, we've dragged it to frame 1, so that's perfect. And we're also going to want to extend our project. So let's just extend it to 480. So we're going to change the end to 480. And you can see now our workspace consists of the entire animation. So if we drag through the timeline, you'll see here's the camera moving around in space like it did in Source Filmmaker, but it looks a bit weird. And the reason for that is because our map doesn't quite line up with the camera animation. So in order to fix that, let's just open another viewport over here and we'll do this one outside of the camera so you can see what the camera's seeing, as well as the entire map. So what we're going to need to do is essentially move the map so that it lines up with where our camera should start. Now, in my case, I've only done this once, but I imagine it will be pretty similar for all of the maps. It's just a simple rotation. So to do that, I'm just going to select the collection up here. You see this is our Dust 2 map. I'm going to collapse that collection, right click on it and choose select objects. And then all I'm going to do is hovering over this viewport over here, I'm going to press R on my keyboard to rotate. And you'll see if I move the mouse, it rotates the map like so. Then I'm going to press Z on my keyboard to rotate only on the Z axis. And I'm going to essentially just move the map to be where our animation starts. So I know that it starts about here. So in my case, I know that that is just a 90-degree rotation. So I'm just going to type in 90 and actually tap minus because it was minus 90 degrees I had to turn, and press enter, and there you go, you can see the camera's in the correct position. The camera can't see very far, and the reason for that is because the clipping distance is quite low. So let's just select the camera itself, and in the camera properties we're going to change the clip end to 75,000, and that should give us enough distance to be able to fit everything into our view. And as you can see, our camera now walks through the map just like it did on Source Filmmaker. I'm just going to scale up our camera a bit because it's very small in relation to everything else. So let's just scale that up so that we can actually see it. So I think that's about a good size. I just scaled it by pressing S and dragging with the mouse. And now what we're going to do is import that other player. So in order to do that, let's go up to File, Import FBX. And here is our player FBX that we exported earlier. So we're just going to click import on that. Okay, so now it's been imported. If we press numpad 0 on your keyboard, or you can come up to view and frame selected, you'll see it should teleport you so that you can see the character. And here you can see it's been successfully imported. Mine's actually gone inside the Dust 2 collection, so I want to remove that. So I'm actually going to bring it outside the collection. So as you can see, I just moved it outside the collection. I'm just going to rename it by double clicking on the name there. And I'm just going to call this player so we know what it is. And I'm actually going to put it in its own collection called players. And this is where you can then import and add multiple different players, for the amount that you exported that were present in your demo. So now what we're going to do is I'm just going to hide a few of these objects around him because he's currently in the bottom of the map down here. So I'm going to select some of these objects and press H just to hide them so we can see easier, because this is the middle of this is the center point of our project, and therefore where everything is going to be imported. So as you can see, he's really small. So let's just scale him up a bit. So I'm going to select the bones, come into the object properties, and you can see the scale is currently 0.01. So I'm going to click and drag across all of those and change it to 1. And now if we zoom out, you'll see our character is much more normal sized. So if we move him into the map somewhere, you can see he's the size he should be in relation to everything else. So before we do that, let's add the animation back. So what we're going to do is make sure you have the armature selected and nothing else. Come up to File, Import, and now we're going to use this bottom one here, the Source Engine, which is from the Blender Source Tools plugin, and we're going to look for Player Animation, and over here we're going to change Append to Target to Validate Against Target, and Bone Shapes from Sphere to Default. I don't think this matters, but we're going to use that anyway, and then we're just going to hit Import. As you can see, he's disappeared, but if we just select the armature and then press numpad 0 or View and Frame Selected, you'll see we'll now be able to see. So I can see the little orangey yellow mark over here. So if I look under the map, you can see the character is in fact over here and is moving. If I play the animation, is moving correctly just like they did in the animation itself, but obviously they're not quite in the right position. So let's go ahead and fix that. So to do that, with the armature selected, I'm just going to enable the gizmo, and that's going to let us move the character to where they need to be. Now all I'm going to do is, just because I can't remember exactly where he was standing, I'm going to just load up Source Filmmaker in the same project, which will give me a bit of perspective on where exactly to place this guy. And you will have to place all of the characters manually, unfortunately. Although we get the location data as far as relative to wherever we position him, it won't be accurate in relation to the map like the camera is. And I'm hoping that's something that more tooling in the future can fix, or I can figure out the reason as to why that is. But at the moment, this is the best that I can do. So let's go back into Source Filmmaker. We'll open our recent project. And let's find where our other player is at the end. So he's standing right here. So let's position our model in accordance with that. So I'm just going to put this on my second monitor, and I'm going to line this up correctly. So in Source Filmmaker, I'm pretty near the end of the animation. So let's just go to the end of the animation, and let's move our character. Again, I just changed where the gizmo was by doing set origin to geometry, which is going to put it in the middle of our mesh. But of course, this moves with all the frames, so ideally put it somewhere where you can use it just quickly now. So I know it's around here somewhere. I'm actually going to switch to material view to give us a bit of a better idea. Now as you can see, the textures for our model haven't really loaded in correctly, so let's just quickly fix that. And the way we're going to do that is by using the textures from the model that we exported in the last Blender tutorial. So again, go and watch that if you haven't, to know how to do that. And we use Source Viewer to do that. So we're going to come up to File, Import GLTF, and we're going to paste in the path for that. And we want variant A. Of course, the model that you import is going to need to match the one that you exported from the game. So, if you're playing Nuke or Inferno or whatever, and they have different character models, then you're going to need to use the corresponding one for that, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to be using the textures for this, which is the Phoenix terrorist model. So we're going to import that. Now that's imported, if we fly over to it, you can see he's here and he's got all the correct materials. So let's look in the shading tab, select the mesh, and you can see the materials are bare arm, legs, body, and balaclava. So let's go back to our player mesh, which is right here, and as you can see, we currently can't see anything. I'm actually going to hide those bones quickly and select the model. So you can see it currently doesn't have any textures, so let's have a look. So what is this supposed to be? Looks like it's supposed to be the bare arm, so we're just going to search for bare arm. There you go. The next slot, this is legs, so we're going to search for the Phoenix legs, which come from the other model. This is going to be the body, so we'll search for body variant A, and you can see the balaclava's already got a texture on it, so we could just do something as simple as messing with the metallic value to make it less reflective, or make it rougher or whatever, but I'm just going to grab the other balaclava texture and put that on like that, and we'll just drag the specular down, and there is our model. Now of course what we need to do is realign it with the ground, just like we did in here. So it's sort of 1, 2, 3, and 4 tiles over from this pole. So Let's position it like so. And there you go, you can see that's pretty much lined up. Of course, you can spend as long as you want doing this. For the sake of the tutorial, I'm just gonna do it roughly. So as you can see, that is pretty much where it needs to be. If I disable the bones and we watch the actual animation itself, you can see he runs, does the jump. Of course, this is in slow motion because I can't render this at maximum speed. And there you go. So that is pretty much exactly what happened in the source filmmaker demo, and we'll worry about importing weapons later. Before we do that, let's move on to the POV animation. So to do that, I'm just going to disable the viewport shading so that we can have a bit more performance when moving around the viewport. And yeah, let's import our arm models. So before we do that, let's open a brand new blend project. And again, we're going to remove the default stuff, come up to File, Import FBX, and we're going to find the view model, which we want, and we're going to import that FBX. As you can see, we now have the arms of our character, and what we're going to want to do is duplicate it. So I'm just going to select them both and press Shift D to duplicate, and now you can see we've got two sets of arms. So on one, we're going to do File, Import, Source Engine, and we're going to look for I'm going to pick the unaltered one, and we're going to do Validate Against Target and Default, and import that. And as you can see, it's imported the two arms, and if we go through the timeline, you can see we've got the animations and things like that, but they look a bit weird. They're not in the right position, and you know, we need the template in order to fix that. So let's select the arms that don't have an animation applied, File, Import, and we're going to grab the other animation. So this is the fixed one, Validate Against Target, Bone Shape Default, and we're going to import that. And now, as you can see, we've got two arms here which do the animation correctly, and then we have these other arms, that disappear off, you know, and do their own thing, like so. So this is the issue that I was having before, where those arms aren't actually, you know, where they're supposed to be. But to realign them with the world correctly, because obviously they're sideways, just select the bones, press R, X, and then type in -90. Again, I don't know if these values will be exactly the same for your animations, but you know, just rotate them such so that they line up correctly. And you're going to want to ideally do like a round number, like 90, 180, 270, something like that, as they should only be off by an exact amount rather than, you know, just an arbitrary value. And we're going to do the same for the other ones. So R, X, -90. And you can see that now, you know, that lines up properly. Now what we need to do is just go to a point where those other arms have disappeared. And what we're going to want to do is make a duplicate of these. So we're going to just press Shift D to duplicate that. And you can see we've got a new set of arms and bones. And we're just going to hide one of those and make sure the render mesh is hidden as well. So now we just have one set visible. And this set, I'm going to keep the right arm. So let's just rename this to right. And now what we're going to do is select the bones. We're going to press T to go into edit mode, and we want to keep the right arm, so let's get rid of the left arm. To make the bones appear above, we can do viewport display and change it to in front so you can see all of the bones, and let's just select all of these and press delete and get rid of the bones, just like that. As you can see, they're now gone. Let's press tab again to go back to object mode, select the leftover arm, press tab to go into object mode, edit mode again, come up to the top corner and hit toggle X-ray, and then we're just going to select all of the vertices there, press delete vertices, and you can see the arm is now gone. Now if we press tab again, we'll go back into object mode, and you can see we've just got this one arm left, which is exactly what we want. So now we've separated, we've got our right arm, and now we're going to do the same for the left arm. So let's hide the right arm as well as its mesh, enable the other one as well as its mesh, and we're going to call this one left. So let's do the same thing again. We'll select the bones, press tab. So previously we got rid of this arm. So in this instance, let's get rid of this one. So let's move the bones to be in front, and we're going to get rid of all of those. Goodbye bones. Tab back into object mode, select the object, tab back into edit mode, enable X-ray, select all of the vertices, delete vertices, back to object mode. And now if we disable X-ray and re-enable our right arm, you see we've now got our two arms, and because they're now separate, we can control them independently. So here is our left arm, and here is the right arm. Now all we need to do is go back to frame 0. Okay, so now before we line up this arm with the other one, we need to make sure that they're all on the right scale. So let's select the bones, and over in the object properties, you can see they're all scaled to 0.01. So let's, just like we did with the other character, let's scale that to 1, scale this to 1, scale this to 1, just like so. And now if we zoom out, you'll see the arms, you know, are much bigger. And now all we need to do is select the arm over here, and you can use the gizmo if you want, or just press G to move and then press Y to lock it on the Y axis. And we're going to just line it up with this arm over here. So let's go in a bit closer. You can hold shift to make the mouse movement slower. So this is without shift, this is with shift. So I'm just going to line it up as best as I can. Of course, you can see this one is slightly behind the original one, but that's the same with this other arm, so it shouldn't matter. I don't remember it doing that before, but it's doing it now, so there you go. That seems to be relatively well lined up. That's fine for the sake of the tutorial. And as you can see, now these arms are in the correct position, and we can just remove the ones that are flying around. So let's right click on that and hit delete hierarchy. And now we've got our left and our right arms that do the animation that is required throughout the replay. Now let's just rename this collection to, I'm just call it Viewmodel. And then the final thing we're going to want to do is have a way to control both of the arms at the same time. So we can press Shift A and we can come down to empty, and then we'll just to a plane axis and we'll scale that up. And essentially what this is going to be is just like a single position that we can use to control both the arms. So you know, we'll put it about here, I suppose, and then all you need to do is select the armature of one, hold down shift, select the armature of the other, and then finally keep holding shift and select the empty, and you can press Control P and then object keep transform. And essentially what that means is we can now drag this empty around and it will control both the arms at the same time, which is exactly what we need. So let's just save this, and then back inside of our other project we can do file, and then you can link if you want to make changes to the view model in the other file and have them update inside of this one, or you can just do append, which is what I'm going to do, and we'll find our view model and import that. And as you can see, the arms are now imported, but they're in this pile of junk, so let's drag them out and move them over towards where our camera is, which is about here, I believe. Yep, here's the camera. Yeah, and as you can see, the arms are now imported correctly, and they're the correct size because we scaled them to 1 in the other project. And as long as you hold on, as long as you select this empty, you'll be able to drag them around and move them as you please. Now here is the awkward bit, and this involves lining them up with the camera as they are in Source Filmmaker. The camera itself should be set to the FOV that you had in Source Filmmaker. So in my case, if I switch to field of view, it's 94 degrees. So that should be set correctly. And now something I recommend you do when working with the view model, inside a Source Filmmaker, you can render out the animation, which I show you how to do in the other video, where I teach you how to get the demos from CS2 into Source Filmmaker. And essentially what that's going to do is give you a output that looks like this. So as you can see, this has got all of the frames of the animation, all as different images. So I can scroll through them just like this, and that's the animation that I've exported. And inside of the camera, you can go to background images, tick that, hit add image, and then do open. And if we go into that file, which if I grab the path for that, paste it in here, press A to select them all and hit open image. And then down here we can tap front. You'll see we've now got an overlay of the render that we did on top of our view model, so we can see that everything lines up in Blender just like it did inside of Source Filmmaker. So you can see everything is in the correct position. It helps us validate where this other guy was. So you can see he's pretty much spot on with where he needs to be over there, and that just helps us line everything up. And then yeah, of course, using the same thing, if we open up another viewport, we'll do one like this, so we can see where the arms are. If you want to adjust the opacity of the image that's overlaid, you can come down here and there's the opacity slider, so you can, you know, change how visible one is over the other. I think about 50% is fine. And essentially it's going to be a lot of trial and error messing around with this little empty to get the arms in the correct position. You can have a look in Source Filmmaker. So, you know, as you can see how the hands are lined up in there, and essentially you're going to need to maneuver these around such that it looks somewhat similar. So we'll just position them for the tutorial, so you can see that's not exactly right, but it's close enough for the tutorial. Of course, obviously spend time lining this up. But before we do that, we want to make sure that the textures are rendering correctly, which I don't believe they will be. So if we switch to material view, as you can see, yeah, the arms are invisible just like they were for the other character, so we can simply just reuse that same texture. So we'll search for bare arm, apply that. As you can see, the arm now has the skin on it, and now has the skin texture on it, and we'll do the same for the other arm. So shading, we'll search for bare arm again, and as you can see, that's now fixed. Okay, so as you can see, I've made another quick attempt at trying to line these hands up as as best as I can in a short amount of time. Obviously, that's not perfect, but I'll show you later one that I made earlier where I managed to get it pretty much exactly where they need to be. But as you can see, that is pretty much as good as it's going to get in a short amount of time. And now all we need to do is add our weapon models. Okay, so a way to export the weapon models is much the same as we did with the other models, is to create existing elements and find the weapon. So in my case, it's this AK. Right click on that, right click again, open a model editor, and from here you'll be able to file export as and export it as an OBJ. Again, you can do the exact same thing for all the other models. So for example, I've got this smoke grenade here, so I'm going to go for existing elements and I'm going to search for smoke grenade, which is this one, and again I'm going to do that and export that as well. That's one way you can do it, or like I covered in the other video, you can export them as GLTFs using source viewer. Again, I showed that in my other Blender video, so make sure you watch that. And that way is actually a bit better because it also gets the textures for you as well. So what I'm going to do, import our AK. So let's do file, import, and that would have exported as FBXs. So we'll look for that, and we'll grab AK-47 and import FBX. And as you can see, that's been imported. So let's select the mesh of that. With that selected, we're going to find our right hand, and we're going to add an object constraint, which is going to be a child of, and we're going to grab the eyedropper and put that on the armature of the right hand. And inside bones, we're going to look for hand, and we've got hand R, and we're going to select that. And then all we're going to do is tap on clear inverse, and you'll see that it'll now bring it here. But you can see it's shrunk, so if I scale it, the AK is actually here. So we'll just go to the object properties again, and we're going to change these to 1, and you'll see the AK is now the correct size. So now all we need to do is rotate it to line up with the hand. So let's actually hide that so we can see a bit better. So we're going to need the finger on the trigger, and there you go. You can see that pretty much lines up. One thing I've forgotten to do is you actually see there's 2 AK models. So the first one is this one, which is the one that we don't want. You'll see it's got these weird like embossings, and it's extruded and looks kind of more detailed and cartoony than the classic one from CS, which you'll see is much more angular and flat. So we can just discard this other one completely and then use this one as our reference, because this is the AK that we're actually going to want to use. And you can see that's not perfectly lined up, but it's close enough for this demonstration. And then as for shading, we're going to have much the same issue as we've had with the other stuff, where if we enable the viewport shading, you'll see the AK has no texture whatsoever. So let's go to the shading tab, and what we're going to do is grab the texture for that. So this is where I said in the other video where I explained how to use source viewer to get the models. Those will have textures that actually work. So like here you go, you can see you can change the base color, and you can add your skins or whatever, but the other ones have better textures by default. So let's just import one of those. So we'll just grab that and import. And you can see it's down here. Again, this is the same issue with the 2 AKs, so we'll get rid of the other one and just keep this one. And you can see the shader, the texture is just called AK-47. So let's go back here, select that, and we'll put AK-47 on it, as you can see. And then all you need to do is grab your skin. Again, I showed how to do this in the other video, so I'm just gonna grab my skin. So let's open that, and you'll see this is the Empress skin, and all I'm going to do is disconnect metallic and roughness, and I'm just going to bump up the metallic to make it look more like the get a gun in game. Again, this is all very dodgy. This is not how it's supposed to be. These materials are not set up properly. I will work on getting good CS2 materials for Blender in the future and update, along with of course any updated tooling or things like that. But this is not ideal, but for the moment this is the best way to do it. So there you go. And now we've added our weapon, all we need to do is make sure that this follows the camera. So as you can see, it doesn't currently follow the camera. If we select the 3D cursor and press Shift S, and then we do cursor to active, you'll see it'll put the 3D cursor at the origin of the camera. We can then do Shift A, and I will add another empty. So I'm going to do a plane axis here, and we'll scale that up. Now all you need to do is find the axis that's controlling everything else. So you can see that's this one here that's connected to the arms, which the gun is then parented to the arms. And we're going to hold Shift and click on this this one, press Ctrl P, object keep transform, and you'll see now we'll be able to control the other ones with this axis, which is great. And then all we're going to do is parent this one to the camera. So hold shift again, select them both, and object keep transform, and you'll see now the hands will follow the camera. The reason we added another empty is because it's handy to be able to rotate the view model via the camera's origin, rather than doing any transformations down here is all like really awkward, whereas doing them from up here makes a lot more sense in relation to how the camera works, you know, compared to down here where it's going to be doing some weird stuff like this. And the reason for that is because if we watch the animation through, as I drag through, you'll see the hands. Currently this should be a smoke grenade, but I'll show you how to hide the rifle in a minute. You'll see the hands do some weird stuff where they're not where they're supposed to be. So the idea is you can grab the empty, and then inside, and then using this empty, you'll be able to rotate the hands to put them and drag them to put them where they're supposed to be, if that makes sense. So this would currently be holding the butterfly knife. So that's the point of this empty and why we've done it like that, because you will have to move it over time and add keyframes to, you know, change the position. In order to hide the gun when necessary, as you drag through, you'll see here is where if I enable the overlay, let's make that visible. You'll see here is where I bring out the smoke grenade. So we're going to need to go back to when the gun disappears off the screen, which is right here. And then we can select the armature of the AK, press I to set a keyframe and choose scale. And then just go forward, you know, one keyframe, press S, type in 0, press enter, which is going to scale it to a size of 0, press I and then scale again. And you'll see now the gun is gone. We can replace it with the smoke grenade. And here's the gun again. And when you get the gun out later, all you have to do is copy the keyframe that sets the scale at 0 so that it remains 0 until this next keyframe. And then select the other keyframe that sets it at 1, go forward 1, paste it in, and you'll see the gun has come back. So it disappears like this. The gun, I don't think, actually gets brought out until about here. So we will move that like so. As you can see, it then gets the gun back out towards the end. So it's gone. This would be the butterfly knife, and then the gun comes back. Of course, this rotation is completely off. You'll need to use this empty to rotate the viewport so that it's lined back up again. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for the first person animations. Just rinse and repeat what I did with the AK, with the butterfly knife and the smoke grenade. And then just like how I keyframed the AK's scale, you're going to want to keyframe this empty's position over time to keep the viewport centered. In order to fix the weird bug with the viewport like this, so all these black spots, in actual fact these black spots are transparent when we switch to cycles. So if I switch to cycles and change to rendered view, you'll actually see most of the map is transparent, which is not ideal because you can see through everything. So what we're going to do is apply a very quick fix to this, which again I do not think is the optimal solution, but is just a really quick way that I found in the meantime to deal with this problem. And essentially what that is to select the texture. So as you can see, I've selected this. This texture is applied to loads of things, so we only have to do it once and it will apply to everything else. And essentially what we do is we just set V0 to 1.3 and V1 to 1, and then if we swap back to rendered mode, you'll see that's fixed it, and that works for every texture. So if I select this one, 1.3, and the V1 to 1, you'll see that fixes that. 1.3, 1, see that fixes that. And essentially you just need to do this to every single texture. So if we add an HDRI, which obviously adds shading to everything, film and make the background transparent, you'll be able to see that the ground texture is now much nicer and similar to how it would have been in-game, rather than this transparent mess, which we can easily fix by doing this. That's pretty much all there is to getting these animations into Blender. So as you can see, here is one that I made earlier when I was actually learning how to do this. You can see it's the same map. You got the same guy over here, except I've given him an AWP lightning strike, which, like I said earlier, you can just pair exactly the same as you do the guns over here. Just add the child of object constraint to the other player's hand bone. And as you can see, the view model is all lined up perfectly. As you run through, we swap to the smoke grenade and then get the AK back out. Out comes the knife, and then the AK again at the end. And as you can see, it pretty much, if I enable the background image, you're able to see it pretty much lines up exactly with the render from Source Filmmaker. The only issue is there's no like view bob, but of course I could animate that in if I wanted to later on. You'll see bring out the smoke pretty much exactly lines up with that of the original. So if I, there's the original, there's my one, much the same as with the AK. It's pretty much bang on. Of course, this took a little while to figure out and place correctly, but once it's there and you've keyframed it, you're pretty much good to go. This is what it looks like with a basic HDRI. So as you can see, we've got our own lighting on Dust 2. Of course, you can change the location of the lighting as you see fit. So here's the end. The position of the AK in the Source Filmmaker version actually, to me, looks off here. You see how it's floating in the hand? So in my version, I tried to fix it, although I might have overcorrected and gone down a little bit too much. That's pretty much how you can import your CS2 demos into Blender to create stuff like this. If you guys did find this tutorial helpful at all, then please do let me know, as well as let me know anything that you think I could improve or any other videos that you'd like to see on the channel in the future. Thank you for watching this all the way through. I know this is a very, very long video. Like I said before, if you haven't watched the other 2 videos, then go ahead and make sure you watch those to get some more context and understanding as to how this all works. Like I said, I'll keep you up to date with any more advances in the technology and tooling around CS2. Make sure you slap a like on the video and subscribe if you did find it helpful and you want to see more videos like this. And other than that, thanks to Licht for sponsoring the video, and I'll catch you in the next one.